Welcome to QSR Meet NVivo series. Today's topic is automatic coding techniques with NVivo 11 for Windows. I'll be your host for today. My name is Stuart Robertson, and I'm an NVivo consultant and trainer, and I've been working with NVivo for the past 15 years. I came to NVivo during my doctoral work. I used it for both my literature review as well as my actual research. My dissertation was on the social and cultural influences that come into play in the creation of an alternative educational environment, and I looked at the creation of a charter school. So the things that I share with you today are coming from a very practical and pragmatic viewpoint. Today's focus is on NVivo 11 for Windows. There are three versions of NVivo 11 for Windows: Starter, Pro, and Plus. The techniques that we'll be talking about today are available in Pro and Plus. So all of them will be available in Plus, some of them will be available in Pro, and I'll point out those that are available in Plus only. The auto coding techniques are not available in Starter. There are a number of different file types that NVivo can work with. It's a program designed to help you organize and analyze unstructured non-numeric data. And you can bring things in from Word files, PDFs, to Excel spreadsheets, looking at material from audio and video files, pictures, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. You can also bring in surveys either from in an Excel spreadsheet format or from SurveyMonkey and Qualtrics. We do have partnerships with them that you can access your files, as well as some bibliographic softwares, including Zotero, Mendeley, RefWorks, and EndNote. So there's a wide variety of data types that you can access and work with inside of NVivo for Windows. Today we'll be looking at auto-coding techniques. We'll be giving a high-level overview of some of the possibilities to give you an idea about what tools are available depending on your needs. And in particular, we'll look at auto-coding using structure and style, existing coding patterns. We'll look at thematic analysis and sentiment analysis, both of which are available in Plus, and surveys, working with surveys as well. When you think about NVivo as part of the research process, you can think about it, you'll gather your data as you would with any project. You'll import it into NVivo, and from there you can explore and analyze the data, as well as visualize and ultimately share that data out among your research findings. At this point, I'm just going to swap over my screen and head out to NVivo itself. Okay. Today, I will be working within NVivo Plus. The workspace is identical between Pro and Plus. Starter has fewer options on it, but the structure is basically the same. To get started today, I actually imported some sample interviews. These are actually the sample ones that are used in the project that comes with NVivo. But at this point I've brought them in and nothing has been coded at this point in time. What I wanted to be able to share with you today is the auto-coding techniques that are available. We're actually going to start down with structure and style, use source structure or style, because that one is available in both NVivo Pro and Plus. So let me start there. I've opened up 3 of the interviews to give you a sense of structure and style. To call attention to a couple of things that may have gone overlooked if you've dabbled with the NVivo sample project before. In these interviews, you may have noticed that there were sort of section headers that were placed in each of them. Q.1 connection to down east, and that continued through a Q.6. Each of those interviews had that section header available within it. That header itself was done in heading style 1, which is exactly the same as the heading styles that you are familiar with coming out of Word. So you can apply heading styles in Word, bring those documents into NVivo, and those heading styles will transfer over. You may also have noticed that the people were introduced a little bit, the speakers were introduced a little bit differently. After the speaker's name, there was a hard return, and then what the person or speaker actually said. The reason for this, applying heading styles, the name's heading style 2, the section headers heading style 1, with the hard returns after, is NVivo can actually use that to create nodes based on heading styles. So let me come over to the documents that I've brought in here, and I'm going to select all of these interviews. They have all been set up exactly the same. And if I come up to Analyze and Autocode, I'll start with use the source style or structure. This can be used with documents with heading styles, the Word documents with the heading styles in them. If I've brought in an Excel spreadsheet, I can also use this with columns and rows, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later in this session. In this case, I'm going to use source style or structure. I can use the paragraph styles, and by the way, you also can use the paragraphs. It will number so that it'll take paragraph 1 from every document and put it in a node, paragraph 2. Typically, I prefer to use the paragraph styles. It gives me a little bit more control over exactly what I'm going to start putting into the nodes that are created. If I want to code by the topics, by the section headers that I have there, I'm going to use heading style 1. I can simply move that over from my available paragraph styles to my selected. I'll go ahead and click Next. I'm going to put these under a new node. I'll put it in my nodes folder, and I'm going to call this interview or interviews sorted by question. I'll go ahead and click Finish. And if I come over to the node section here, I can see in my nodes folder that NVivo has created a node for each of the sections. And if I open up that node by double-clicking on it, I'll be able to see here's Barbara's response to question 1. And as I continue scrolling down, Charles. I'm just scrolling down a little bit more. Dorothy, and so on. So basically, I've taken everybody's section 1 and brought them all together in this one place. Couple of quick points. It's telling me the number of references that I have and the percentage coverage. I often get questions about that. Basically, in terms of a document such as this, it's the number of characters that have been coded at this node divided by the number of characters in the document as a whole. So it's giving you a sense of whether this takes up a large chunk of that data source or perhaps a smaller one. You may also notice here that I actually have two Q.6s, and that came up just from a different type. Just a different typo here, where many of them, 6 of them were set up with barriers to and opportunities for. One of them accidentally got typed with the word or. Easy enough to fix. I can right-click and I can cut one of these nodes and right-click and merge into the selected node. So I do have that ability. That being said, I did want to share one suggestion with you. If this is something that you may want to use with your own data, my suggestion is before transcribing or having something, having interviews transcribed, actually create a template in Word so that you can type in your heading titles with the hard returns, apply the heading styles to them, and then save it as a template so that could be opened and the transcription can take place in the template. It'd be saved as a document, reopen the template, and go to the next one. It's just a way of making sure that all of your headings and heading styles are consistent across all of your interviews. But if something like this pops up, you can see that I can quickly fix that little issue. I'm going to come back to my sources here for a moment because another question I often get is if I want to separate out my interviewer's voice from my interviewees. This is also something that comes up with focus group transcripts a lot of times. Being able to break them apart if you wish to look at individuals within a focus group, or if you want to use things such as the word frequency query, but pull out the questions that were asked so that the results you get are more geared or more accurate towards what was said by your participants. This is a place where having heading styles on the names can work. If you remember in these examples, the heading style was heading style 2 given to the names. You also want to make sure there's a hard return. So a lot of times this would either be done during the typing process, or you can, in Word, you do have the ability to change, find and replace formats so that you can do that. In this example, I'm going to go back and select my interviews again, come up to auto code, come back down to source style or structure, and this time instead of using heading style 1, I'll move that back to my availables. I'm going to use heading style 2. I'm going to put them under a new node. And in this case, with NVivo, when we create nodes around our units of analysis, in this case, the individuals I interviewed would be my units of analysis. I'm actually going to create them as cases because later on I may want to attach attributes to them, and I'll talk more about that a little bit later in the presentation. So I'll create cases. I'm going to call this interviews sorted by speaker. I'll go ahead and click Finish. And if I go back to my Node section here and into the Cases folder, I now have a case for each of my participants in which I've captured their particular responses. I can always clean this up if we have that chance. If I wish to do that, I can. If I do know, for example, who my interviewers are, I certainly can select them. For example, in this case, Henry Linder and Nancy are my interviewers. And if I wish, I can simply delete them from my cases. So if I want to use those cases to run, say, a word frequency on, I certainly can. Okay. Just a reminder, if questions do arise during the presentation, please feel free to send them via the question panel, and I will do my utmost to answer them before our session is over. In this case, the cases that I deleted would be technically gone at this point. However, there is an undo feature that I can undo up to the last 5 things I did prior to a save. So I can, if I wish, undo that to bring them back. Sometimes people are hesitant to delete something. And in cases like that, oftentimes I may create a subfolder here and just simply create one as, say, a holding folder. And if I wish, I could then go and just simply move them over into there. One thing I do want to mention, that even if I do delete them in the cases folder, they are still in existence in the sources. So I haven't taken them out of sources yet. I've just simply removed the cases that I've created. Just a little clarification there, hopefully to be of assistance in understanding. So this is a very straightforward technique. This takes a little bit of planning ahead of time if you are going to be doing it, but it certainly is one way that you can create some initial broad brush separation of your data. Depending on when you're thinking about the auto coding, typically I'll put them in cases because that will give me the option to later add attributes if I wish. If I wanted to, I certainly could create them as nodes. There's nothing stopping that. But when we get to attributes, we'll talk a little bit more about that as to why you might go cases over nodes per se. Let me go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and clean up my screen a little bit here. With NVivo Plus, I do have some other options available to me so that if I have my sources here, under auto code, I do have the ability to use existing coding patterns. I'll talk a little bit about this. I don't know that there's been enough coding done that it will work out perfectly, but I want to introduce this concept to it. I'll go ahead and click Next here. And what this does when I'm auto-coding using existing coding patterns, if I have done some coding in documents, let's say, for example, let's say I had 100 documents. I've gone through and I've coded maybe 10, 12, 15 of them to certain nodes that I've created. What I can do is ask NVivo to analyze those coding patterns, and if there's enough information there that it can generate potential patterns, use those to bring in data that from sources that haven't been coded yet. So in this case, I can select the nodes that I might want to take a look at, and typically these would be done thematically, and the more concrete the theme is, the better the results will be. But this is an option here, so I can look at selected nodes. I can set how much coding I'd like NVivo to do. Right now, I usually will start out in the center, but if I want to create less coding, so I want NVivo to be more particular about applying those patterns, I certainly can slide down to that end. If I want more coding, I can relax, do more coding by relaxing the application of the patterns. I'll go ahead and click Next here. NVivo does go through and will tell me whether or not it has assessed them, and whether if there's no issues detected. If there are issues detected, it will let you know. They could be things such as no significant pattern detected, not enough coding done, and you can decide whether or not you want to continue with those with that coding for those particular nodes. You can also cancel out at this time and go back and perhaps do a little more coding if you wish. I'll go ahead and click Next here. NVivo asks, do you want it to code sentences or paragraphs? I'll stick with sentences, and NVivo will go through and it will show me in a matrix each of the sources I used, as well as the nodes that I asked it to include, and it will show me the number of additional sections or number of references that were coded. If I'd like to go in and take a look at that, I can simply double-click on the node, double-click on the cell, and be able to assess how much, if that is really meaningful, and if I need to, prior to creating the nodes, I can always uncode that information if I wish. The last part, really the last big auto-coding technique, is the newest one, and this one is only available in Plus. These next two are only available in Plus. One is to identify themes. NVivo, if I've coded nothing, absolutely nothing, and I'd like to see what potential themes might be in my data, I can use this. There is an algorithm behind the scenes that will go through the sources that I select, looking for nouns and noun phrases, looking for repetition within and between the sources that I have selected, and then it will generate a potential list of themes for me, or nodes for me. And from there, I can pick and choose the ones that I'd like to continue with in my project. If I'll go ahead and click Next here, I had selected, in case you missed it, I had selected all of my interviews before I went into this option. When it comes up, I can start to see what options, what potential topics were there, as well as at least one layer, typically one layer of subtopics. If I notice that there are some here that I know right away are not pertinent to what I'm about to do, I can simply uncheck them and NVivo will not create those nodes. I'll go ahead and click Next here. Again, I have the ability coding sentences or paragraphs. Typically, I go with sentences because when I want to go back and review, it allows me to very quickly decide whether or not something obviously doesn't belong and be able to uncode it. After that, I can always go back and see these pieces in their full context if I'd like to be able to adjust the coding a little bit more. A lot of it depends on your needs. It's creating a folder called auto-coded themes for me, and I'll finish. It will give me initially a couple of pieces for me to get a sense of what just occurred. One is a hierarchy diagram, so I can see amount of coding. I get a sense of how much coding was done in a comparative way. Phishing was my largest one, and then it will break it down into subtopics underneath, so I can see coding underneath that piece if I wish. It will also provide me with a matrix showing me each of the sources, as well as the number of references that were taken out of those sources at those particular nodes. The other thing that it did during this process, over in the node section here, it created the auto-coded themes, and I can now see that these nodes have been created, and I can now go into those nodes and review the data that's there. If I decide that something doesn't fit right away, I certainly can highlight it and uncode at this node and be able to pull it out. I can also use the link going back to the source itself and be able to see the actual piece and decide if I need to expand the coding, or maybe when I see it in its full context, I could decide at that point that really it isn't pertinent, and I can also uncode it right from here. So I could uncode from recent nodes and be able to pull that piece out. Again, it does use an algorithm. It still needs you as the researcher to be able to clean these up. But when you have large amounts of data and a very short turnaround time, it is a good tool to help you do an initial sorting. And a lot of times the amount of cleanup will depend on how pertinent the number of references would be. Sometimes you need to be very careful about those numbers. Other times you have some play. You're not going to worry about the quantity of pieces. You're simply looking for patterns within them. So you definitely do have flexibility there. The other way that I've used this auto-coding, thematic auto-coding, is once I've finished my coding, I actually will run the auto-coding and see if anything comes up that I didn't pick out. And then I can review and see what types of data are in there and decide if this is a topic that I do need to add to my node list or my code list here. So in that way, it becomes sort of a strategy to help me perhaps try to assure that I've got saturation in the topics, or I haven't let my bias pop up and blind me to things that I didn't want to find. So again, these tools have many different ways that you can use them. If I come back again, let me come back for a moment to my sources here. The other option that I have is to use the algorithm, let me come up to Analyze and Autocode, for sentiment analysis. So it will look at the different comments that are made in there, and looking at keywords, assign them a value, +1 to -1, and then adjust that based on the words that are around it to try to differentiate potentially 2 levels of positive, 2 levels of negative, and anything that doesn't fall into there could be seen as neutral. It will also, in the initial diagrams, let you see mixed, but it will store the positive and negative comments in your project file itself. So let me go ahead and identify sentiment here. Again, I like using sentences, but paragraphs are also available. I'll go ahead and finish, and NVivo again will give me a visualization so that I can get a sense of what's happening here. And initially I have a hierarchy diagram here so I can see each of my sources and take a look at it showing me neutral, positive, negative, and mixed. Although it saves the positive and the negative, if I do want to see some of these potential neutral or mixed comments, I can right-click right within the hierarchy diagram and view the references right from here. It also, again, does provide a matrix, and I can see, for example, very negative comments if I'm looking at those pieces. Okay. All right, let me clean this up for a minute because I do want you to know that you can adjust those comments if you wish. So for example, if I come over to my node section and I do have a sentiment folder, and I can open up, if I'm looking at my very positive comments here, if I look at something and it was given very positive, but I realized there was a little bit of sarcasm that was thrown in there, one of the things that I can do is I can highlight it and I can change the sentiment. And make those adjustments. So again, it does not write you out of the process as the interviewer. There's always a key thing there. That being said, sometimes what people will do, again, under tight timelines with a lot of data, they may then want to start to look at positive and negative topics across the themes that were generated. And that's where, under the queries, the matrix coding query is a great tool. So for example, I may want to, in the rows, place the topics that came up with the auto-coded themes. And I'm just going to grab some higher level ones here, just a sampling, and add those to my list. And in the columns, I can come in and look at my levels of sentiment. One of the things I did want to point out, in this case, very positive, moderately positive, negative, very negative. I do have the ability, if for any reason I want to switch some of these categories, I can choose a one of these options, and I can move things up and down. That's a piece that sometimes people aren't aware that option is there. But let me go ahead here and run this. So in essence, what it's now done for me is I can start to look at potentially very positive, moderately positive, negative, very negative comments based on the topics. Again, it's a great way if I'm working on that tight schedule and I want to get that very quick overview and can decide from there how much cleanup and follow-up I need to do. Again, these two pieces that I've just shown you, the algorithm-based thematic and sentiment coding, are only available in NVivo Plus, which is in the Windows option. Oftentimes, we do auto-coding for Mac, and auto-coding in the Mac system right now is extremely limited. In fact, nothing that I've shown you yet, that I've shown you so far, is available within the Mac version. That being said, the one thing that is available in Mac as well as Windows is the ability to work with surveys. So I'd like to show that one to you at this point. With the survey data, I actually have found this, the latest iteration of this is incredibly helpful. So if I'm bringing in a survey here, I'll go ahead, I created a survey folder and I'm going to import the survey. I can bring it from Excel, from a text or a CSV file. And as I said, if I have a paid SurveyMonkey account or a Qualtrics account, I do have the ability to connect with those and bring them in directly, so I don't have to export them. If you're using another survey tool, all you need to do, and I believe most, if not all, will allow you to export it, say as a Microsoft Excel file, and be able to bring it in. So I'm going to bring in my survey data here. And the wizard now, this is great. The wizard actually, during the import process, will create the cases for you based on your respondents. It will take the closed-ended questions and create them as attributes. So if you want to look at a subset of your respondents, perhaps based on gender or role or years experience, it's there. And your open-ended questions will be created as nodes, so that you can look at everyone's response to a given prompt and from there begin to code on. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. I'll go ahead and click next here. NVivo shows me in this case that Excel file had multiple worksheets within it. I can only bring in one worksheet at a time. In this case, the survey data is all in one. The other one was simply more of an informational variable explanations. So I'm going to bring in the survey data. I can create the cases. It's telling me right now it'll create the cases as survey data, and I can change that location if I wish. The unique identifier, it suspects that the respondent column is the unique identifier, but I certainly can see any of the other closed-ended columns so that I can make adjustments. So one of the things I do say is please, please, please remember to have a unique identifier for each participant. And I know oftentimes that seems incredibly obvious, but I have had to work with some people who found themselves in a bind because they hadn't created a unique identifier for each respondent. So I just want to give you a heads up on that. In this case, it will also create a classification. In NVivo, a classification is just, it's a heading under which all of the attributes will be created. And I'll show you that in just a moment. I'll go ahead and click Next here. It allows you to review what's coming in. It's showing you the questions from the survey. If it's closed-ended, you can make sure that it is selected as a closed-ended question. Make sure your open-ended questions are correctly identified. And if there are some you don't necessarily need to bring in, you can also choose not to import. So for example, if you're using a much larger survey and you're looking at a small section of that, you may choose not to bring in certain questions that aren't pertinent to the work you're about to do. I'll go ahead and click Next here. Because I'm in Plus, I do get the option to apply the auto-coded themes and the auto-coded sentiment. I don't have to. I can uncheck these boxes if I wish. If I'm in Pro, I will not get this option, just so that you know. Also in Mac, I will not get this option. The other pieces will be, Mac is not quite as automated. I can import the survey, but I can't create the cases and the nodes until the survey is in there. I just mentioned that because I know I saw a flash of a question about Mac in there, so I just wanted to point that out. So I'll go ahead and click Finish, and NVivo is now basically doing the sorting for me. And once it finishes, I'll just simply close this piece here. And it has now brought in my survey data. My open-ended questions are codable if I wish. I can code them like any other type of text-based data. It does show me the breakdown of negative, positive, neutral, and mixed for each of the questions. And I can see very positive, moderately negative, very negative, excuse me, as I'm going through this for each of my questions that I brought in. And just to show you over in the node section, under the nodes, I have a survey data. So it has created a node for each of my questions or prompts. And I can open up a node. This goes back to my reference to coding on. So I'm looking at commercial fishing down east, and I may start to look at these and say, oh, I see something that's saying in trouble. So I might want to have create a node about concerns. So I'll drag and drop it here. Survey data, I'll call this concerns. And I now want it as a child node, so I'll just drag it up to commercial fishing down east. And I now have a subnode called concerns. The key thing is I want people to know that you can code from within a node. You don't have to always be at your source. You can have a node open and code that data to other nodes if you wish. Behind the scenes, NVivo creates links so that all the coding you do is linked to the source in the internals folder. You're not going to miss anything if you code from one node to another. I just wanted to make that in that piece. Just if I have come to my cases here too, I have my survey data, and what it's done is if I right click on a case and I look at the case properties, if I come to the attribute values, it's been classified as a survey respondent, and I can see now it took the closed-ended values and applied them to the case. So now all of the data inside of the case is associated with gender equals female. So if I use my coding queries and I say, what did my female participants say about a certain topic, because this is in place, I can set that criteria up. If there's no classification, there's no attributes. And just to show you where that piece is kept, under the classification section, let me close this. Under classifications and case classifications, I have the list of my attributes that I was looking at there. Okay. Again, these are some abilities, capabilities, some options that you have so that you can think better about what versions might be appropriate for the work that you're about to do. Let me share a couple of other things, and then I can step into the questions in just a couple of minutes. Again, if you're thinking about trying this out, the very first thing I say is try the 14-day free trial. Download the Plus version, 14 days, it's all yours, give it a try. You can, by the way, in the options, you can, once you download the Plus version, you can change it to Pro or Starter if you'd like to see some of the differences for yourself. Those options are there, but that's a great starting point. If you are looking for other options, in the Pro version, there are discounted student licenses available. There are full licenses. NVivo for Teams is a server solution. It's only available for Windows and for Pro and Plus within Windows. Just so you know, that option is there. The server option is not available for Mac or Starter in the Windows. And if you're part of an organization, there are enterprise license agreements also available. Again, QSR would love you to be successful with the work that you're doing. So they have put out resources for you, including a YouTube channel with a lot of tutorial videos there. There's user communities, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, as well as a forum on the QSR website itself. The online help documents are great, and you can access them through the help menu inside of NVivo, so you get to the correct version. And we also have a number of free webinars like this one to give you an overview of some possibilities and maybe point you in directions to look up some of the help or the tutorials that are available for you. I know I have a couple more coming up in the near future, one dealing with visualizations, one dealing with literature review, but please check the QSR website at www.qsrinternational.com to see our list of dates and times for those to be available. All right. Well, I do want to make sure that I thank those of you who do need to head off at this time. I am going to take, I do have a few more moments, and I'll answer as many questions that came in via the question panel as I can. But for those of you who do have to go, I do want to thank you for being with me today.